They called her too old for marriage long before she turned 50, whispered it when she passed through the village market, with her head held high and her hair, bound in simple braids, streaked with silver, muttered it behind closed doors, as if her very existence was an insult to the order of things. And when she finally reached her 50th winter, no one said it aloud anymore, because everyone assumed it was a truth too obvious to repeat, a verdict already sealed by time itself. Yet Asha still rose before dawn every morning, still lit the fire with steady hands, still walked the long path to the river with a clay pot balanced on her shoulder, still lived as if life had not quietly decided she was done. And in the silence of those mornings, she remembered every name she had been called: spinster, barren branch, woman left behind, and how each word had tried to carve something out of her soul, though none had succeeded completely, because somewhere deep inside her she carried a stubborn ember that refused to die, an ember born in her youth when she had once believed love would come like the songs promised, when warriors had ridden through the valley and young girls had giggled behind their hands, when she herself had been chosen once, almost married once, before fate twisted cruelly and left her standing alone at the edge of a life she had never planned to live. And over the years she learned the quiet art of survival, learned how to smile when pity weighed heavier than cruelty, learned how to stand straight when even children looked past her as if she were part of the landscape. And yet that morning, as the sun climbed over the hills and the village stirred awake, something felt different in the air, heavy and charged like the moment before a storm, because word had spread fast and sharp that the northern warriors were returning, young men hardened by battle, led by a commander said to be fearless and merciless in equal measure, a man barely past his prime, whose name carried weight even among elders. And the village prepared itself with nervous excitement, mothers urging daughters to look their best, fathers boasting of lineage and honor, while Asha listened from the edge of the crowd, invisible as always, though she noticed how her heart tightened when she heard his name, Kale, spoken with awe, because something in the way it echoed stirred a memory she could not place. And when the warriors finally appeared at midday, dust rising behind them like a curtain pulled back by destiny, the village gathered as one, eyes wide, breath held, watching young men dismount with confident grace, their armor scarred, their posture proud. And there he was among them, taller than the rest, his presence commanding without effort, eyes sharp yet strangely calm, scanning faces not with hunger or arrogance, but with an intensity that felt searching. And when his gaze passed over Asha, something impossible happened. He did not look away, did not dismiss her as others always did, but paused, just for a heartbeat too long, as if recognizing a truth he had been seeking without knowing its name. And she felt it like a physical blow, her breath catching, her fingers tightening around the strap of her worn shawl, because no man had looked at her that way in decades, not with curiosity, not with respect, not with something that felt dangerously close to interest. And she lowered her eyes quickly, scolding herself for foolish thoughts, reminding herself of her age, her place, the rules that had governed her life for so long. They felt like iron chains. Yet even as she turned away, she could feel his gaze follow, and the whispers began almost immediately, sharp and venomous, women nudging one another, men chuckling under their breath, because everyone had seen it, everyone had noticed the pause. And in a village where stories were born from the smallest sparks, this one ignited fast, and by evening Asha could feel it pressing against her from every side, judgment thick in the air. Yet when she returned to her small hut at the edge of the settlement, lit her lamp and sat alone with her thoughts, it was not shame that filled her chest, but fear of a different kind, fear of hope, because hope was the most dangerous thing a woman like her could allow herself. Hope had wounded her once beyond repair, and still, as night settled, and the sounds of celebration drifted from the center of the village, she could not forget the way the young warrior's eyes had held hers, steady and unafraid, as if he had seen not her age but her story, not her loneliness but her strength. And somewhere far away, in another part of the camp, Kyle sat sharpening his blade, his thoughts strangely unsettled, unable to shake the image of a woman whose face carried years like a map of survival, whose eyes held a depth no youthful beauty could rival. And though he had faced death without flinching, this feeling unsettled him more than any battlefield ever had, because it whispered of a path that would defy every law he had been taught to obey, a path that would ignite conflict, scandal and judgment, and as the night deepened, two lives that had been shaped by loss, silence, and endurance edged closer to a collision neither of them yet understood, a collision that would challenge the village, the warriors, and the very meaning of love itself. And if you feel the weight of this moment, if you want to know what happens when destiny refuses to respect age, rules, or fear, then stay with this story, because what follows will change everything. And if stories like this move you, inspire you, and make you believe in unexpected love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because this journey has only just begun. By morning, the village no longer whispered but watched, eyes sharp with suspicion and hunger for scandal, because the impossible had taken shape overnight, and no one could pretend they had not felt it. And when Asha stepped outside her hut at dawn, she felt the weight of it press against her skin like heat before fire. Women pausing mid-conversation, men glancing, then looking away too quickly, children staring without understanding, and she walked anyway, spine straight, breath measured, because she had learned long ago that shrinking only fed cruelty. Yet even she could not deny that something had shifted irreversibly. And it became clear when Kale sought her out openly, not under cover of darkness, not through secret messengers, but in the full light of day, approaching her as she gathered herbs near the riverbank, his footsteps deliberate, respectful, stopping at a distance that honored her space. And when he spoke her name, not woman or elder or spinster, it struck her harder than any insult ever had, because it acknowledged her existence as something singular and worthy. And the words he offered were simple, almost disarmingly so, yet carried weight, telling her he wished to speak with her, to know her story, not out of pity or curiosity, but because he felt drawn by a strength he recognized, a strength born not from battle but from endurance. And though fear screamed at her to turn away, to protect the fragile peace she had carved out of solitude, something older and braver answered instead, and she agreed, even as the village watched from afar like a gathering storm. And over the days that followed, they spoke often, sometimes in silence, sometimes in long conversations that stretched until the sun dipped low. And Kale listened as no one ever had, listened to her youth, her lost love, the life she had lived on the margins. And he did not flinch at her age, did not soften his gaze with false kindness, but met her truth head-on. And in turn, she saw behind his armor the loneliness of leadership, the burden of expectation, the scars that were not visible, and slowly, inevitably, something sacred took root between them, something that terrified the village more than hatred ever could. Because love that defied order was far more dangerous than open rebellion. And when rumors finally hardened into accusations, when elders summoned Kyle and warned him of disgrace, when women mocked Asha openly and men spat words of shame at her feet, she prepared herself for the moment he would retreat, because history had taught her that men always chose safety over defiance. Yet when the moment came, Kyle stood before the council and spoke with a voice that carried across the square like steel striking stone, declaring that honor was not found in obedience to fear, but in loyalty to truth, and that the woman they dismissed had more courage than any warrior he had led into battle. And gasps rippled through the crowd, outrage erupted, threats were made, alliances strained, and still he did not waver. And when he returned to Asha, offering not secret meetings but open commitment, she felt terror and joy collide within her chest, because love offered so late in life was both gift and risk. And yet she chose it knowing the cost, knowing the village might never forgive her, knowing she might lose the quiet life she had protected for decades. And in that choice, she discovered a freedom she had never known, because love was no longer something she waited for, but something she claimed. And though the path ahead promised hardship, exile perhaps, battle certainly, and judgment without mercy. They walked it together, hand in hand, not as scandal or spectacle, but as proof that life did not end at 50, that hearts did not wither on command, and that destiny did not belong solely to the young. And as they left the village behind, whispers trailing like shadows, Asha did not look back, because for the first time she was not surviving, but living. And Kale, warrior forged by war, learned that the bravest fight he would ever face was standing beside them, woman the world had deemed unworthy. And if this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that love has no expiration date and courage comes in many forms, then don't let this be the end. Subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be told, remembered and shared. And many more powerful journeys await you here.